Hello from the Ambler Arboretum of Temple University, arboretum.temple.edu. My name is Kathy Salisbury and I'm the director of the Ambler Arboretum. And today we had scheduled a director's walk in the garden featuring fragrance, scents, and odors. Oh my! But because of the current concern for everybody's health and safety, we are currently closed to the general public. But I am able to be here today, very excitingly. I'm able to be here to do a virtual walk with you, and from someplace other than my backyard. And so today we're actually going to walk around the wetland garden in the Arboretum and give you some information about some of the plants that feature some fragrances, scents, and odors, oh my, and the plants that are in this garden. And we are working on a plan to get everybody back into the Arboretum to explore and to learn and to go on tours like this together. So we are talking about fragrances, and hopefully you have some of these plants in your yard, and if you don't, maybe you'll consider incorporating them. So we encourage you to lower your mask, to stop and smell the flowers, to pause and enjoy the health benefits of nature and the calming effects that being in a garden has. And then remember that when you're in this garden, when we're able to meet again, or in any other public space, that you put your mask back on and enjoy your time. And so let's get started. We're looking here now at our aqueduct falling into our fountain. The wetland garden, of course, started out as an idea and then a garden in the Philadelphia Flower Show, which focused on the power of plants to harness water. And so this garden does double duty as a stormwater management tool. So it captures water from other places on campus and funnels it down into a planted basin where the water goes back down into the groundwater instead of funneling out into our creeks and streams. And so in this way, we're not contributing to the flooding that happens so often with these storms that we get. And so this garden is an important place to show the power of plants to solve problems and to help the environment. And so we're really thrilled that it's part of the Arboretum. And so let's go look at some of the plants that are around and feature some sort of fragrance. The first plant we're going to look at is this clump of plants. You can see the white flowers here that are arching. This is actually a clump-forming rhizomatous plant. It's a perennial, but it's a wetland plant. So you can see here that it is growing in wet areas with other wetland plants. And I actually never got close enough to this plant before to notice its beautiful fragrance. The flowers just emit this fragrance and just fills the air. Until yesterday, in the crisis of not having air conditioning or a pool to go jump in, I decided to go sit in a creek for a while, and there was a clump of this along the banks of the creek, and I kept smelling this beautiful smell and stuck my nose in the flowers, and it was this plant. And so this is called lizard's tail, and it is a native and great for wet spots. And it has to be pretty wet, not just occasionally wet. They do grow on the banks of creeks that are frequently flooded and their roots are underwater. So you want to make sure you have a situation like that. But they are pretty tough, not much bothers them. And their scientific name has 5 U's in it. So it's definitely an interesting one to try and pronounce. So I encourage you to go and look that up when you have a moment, lizard's tail. And so we're going to move across the boardwalk here. So we have a boardwalk. I try not to move too fast for you. So here's our boardwalk through the wetland garden. And you can just see we had these storms yesterday. And so this rain garden, this bio retention area is full and doing its job. Right? The water's not supposed to stay in there for very long, but long enough to recharge the groundwater. So the next plant that we are going to go take a look at is this one. So this is in the upland area of the wetland garden, so it's more dry. And so here we have pycnanthemum. And pycnanthemum, this is Pycnanthemum muticum. But pycnanthemums in general, the mountain mints, are also native perennials. They get sort of a whitish or maybe light purple flower, and they are a mint, so they are clump forming. You can see there's a big clump of them here. But they are used for tea sometimes. They're a mint, so they have that fragrance in their leaves, that mint fragrance. And they're also great for attracting beneficial insects and pollinators to your landscape. So not only pollinators are insects that we're trying to attract to our landscapes, but we also want to attract those beneficial insects, those insects that attack pest insects. And by attracting those, we lessen the need for us to put inputs into our garden to control pest populations. And so here you have pycnanthemum, which is a great all-around plant. Really, the deer don't tend to bother it, and it is very beneficial in the garden. And just by rubbing the leaves, you get a nice fragrance. And here we have bayberry, which is now known as Morella pennsylvanica. And as a person growing up in the pine barrens of South Jersey, this is a plant that was very familiar to me. It grew sort of at lake edges and on the marginal area between grasses, lawns, and meadows and the forest, and in really sandy soil. And I always know its fragrance from the leaves. So you crush the leaves up and you get this it almost smells like the holidays. Some of you may be familiar with bayberry candles and that scent that is used a lot during the winter holiday times. And this is the plant that fragrance comes from. And in richer soils and shadier spots, it can be more leggy and open, like this specimen is here. But in the sandy areas where I was familiar with it growing, it grew more densely and less sprawling. And sometimes that's the case when we take plants out of their native habitat and put them into traditional garden soils. They sometimes struggle with too much nutrients and too good of soils and too rich of soils, and they sort of stretch and grow lanky and leggy. And sometimes that's the case. And you can fix that sometimes through rejuvenation, where you cut the plant back and it sends up new suckers and looks more compact for a while, or putting a different plant in that place. So these do spread by underground stems, and they will colonize, form a clump. So you can always just cut back the older pieces of it if you wanted to rejuvenate it. This one's gotten quite large, but it's not only do the leaves smell good on here if you crush the leaves, but the females get blue fruits that are very fragrant also, and with a waxy coating on them that are great for the birds, great for wildlife, but also where this original source of that fragrance, that bayberry candle fragrance, you might be familiar with. And because this is what I would do if I were on a walk with you all, I wouldn't hide my eccentricities, my weirdness, and I would pick up this. And this is a black walnut nut. And it has fallen. It's a little premature for these to be falling, but I think because of the recent droughts and the storms that some of our fruits are on the ground now. But black walnut also has a very distinctive fragrance or odor to it. And if you just scratch the husk of the nut and give it a sniff, you can smell, it's pretty unique. I haven't smelled anything like it. And I just think it's a wonderful smell. Some people might not agree. And some of you know that we do tapping of our trees, our walnut trees, for sap. And you would think by smelling this that the sap would taste medicinal in some way, because that's sort of the scent of this. It has a little bit of a medicinal scent to it, fragrance to it, and but it doesn't. It tastes really wonderful with no sense of medicinal at all, unlike birch, which makes a very medicinal tasting syrup in our experience. So black walnut, Juglans nigra, also has this unique fragrance to it. I encourage you to stop and smell. It's not just the roses we can stop and smell, right? And here we have a very popular plant on this campus with the students and the visitors. This is Pawpaw, Simina triloba. These are the leaves of the pawpaw. And their fruit is not ripe yet, but we definitely have some fruit here, you can see. And so the fruit has a distinctive fragrance, but also I like to talk about pawpaws because they are great landscape plants. They give you fruit that's edible, but also they are fairly deer resistant. The deer don't bother them. Of course, that's an issue almost everywhere around. And part of the reason is that they have this chemical in them that is strong and distasteful to mammals, including deer. And if you were to break a leaf of the pawpaw open, you would smell, or crush a leaf up, you would smell the odor of that chemical inside. And it sort of smells like it's based from a petroleum product, like diesel fuel or something like that. It's very strong and kind of petroleum-ish, and it's pungent. And so that's a reason why deer tend to stay away. In fact, if you're looking for plants that the deer won't bother, a good place to start are plants with fragrant foliage, because a lot of times those oils that make up that fragrance are distasteful to mammals. And so that's a good place to start. Here we have Fragrant Sumac, Rus aromatica, or Rus aromatica, depending on who you're talking to. If you're talking to me, it's Rus. And so here we see it's a sumac, but unlike most sumac, it does have these trifoliate leaves, so 1, 2, 3 leaflets per leaf. And if you crush the leaves or scratch the bark, a lot of times you can get a fragrance from the scratching the bark too, you have this scent that comes from it, and that is where it gets its name of Fragrant Sumac. And one of the many ways you can tell this apart from other sumacs. Here you can see it also is setting fruit, and it's a very important wildlife species. Lots of birds eat the fruits of sumac. This particular one is the straight species of Rus aromatica, the fragrant sumac. Very popular now is one called Grow Low, which doesn't get very tall, grows more in a ground cover form, and also deer resistant, great red fall color, and of course important for wildlife. So encourage you to scratch and sniff the branches when you have a chance. So scent has been proven to be tied to memories. I'm sure all of you have experienced a time where you smelled something and it took you right back to a particular place or time, and just brought back vivid memories. And that's just the power of the connection between scent and your memory. And for this plant, this is sassafras. And sassafras, the smell of sassafras takes me right back to when I was little and would walk to school and would grab the leaves of sassafras walking to school. I will never forget that smell. The smell always takes me back to the pine barrens, to where I grew up. And black walnut does the same thing. And whenever I smell those, they bring back very vivid memories of being little in the pine barrens, playing, riding my bike all over the place. All of that just comes back. And sassafras is another one where you can crush up the leaves or scratch the stems, and you get a very distinct fragrance from it. And sassafras has been used as tea, and also is the ingredient filet that you find in Creole or Cajun cooking. It's dried, powdered sassafras leaves, and it's used as a thickening agent. So sassafras, of course, is known for its multiple shapes of leaves on one tree. So you have ones without lobes at all, right? And then you have ones that look like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And then you have mittens, left and right mittens. So that's a good indicator that you're looking at sassafras. So very fragrant. And the roots at one time were used to make tea as well. There was one study that showed a link to using sassafras and cancer, an increased risk of cancer, but there are more studies out there. So I encourage you, before you eat anything, to look up the risks and make your decisions accordingly. It's sassafras. And here we have spicebush. And spicebush is named because of its spicy fragrance and also kind of the spicy flavor of its edible fruit. This does have male and female plants, and so you want to make sure you have both in order to get fruit on these. These are also native, tend not to be bothered by deer, and are good landscape plants. They get nice yellow fall color. They get yellow flowers in the early spring before almost anything else is flowering, maybe along with the maples or just after the maples are flowering. And so it's a nice one to consider incorporating, especially if you like supporting wildlife. Many types of wildlife eat the leaves and the berries. And this is the host plant for the spicebush swallowtail butterfly. So if you have spicebush, you may get spicebush swallowtail, but if you don't have spicebush, you definitely won't have spicebush swallowtail. The fragrance, the oils in this plant create a similar scent to the sassafras. And in fact, sassafras is a co-host of the spicebush swallowtail butterfly. They do prefer spicebush, but they'll use sassafras if it's around. So you can use this as an edible. It does form colonies, but you can maintain it as a single specimen. It can get quite large. So you can see this specimen here in the wetland garden is probably about 8 feet tall here. And it looks like there's a little bit of deer browse line. So when you can see that about 4 feet up, there's that layer of leaves missing from the shrub. Sometimes that's a deer browse line. And the deer do tend to stay away from this because it is so fragrant and full of oils. But sometimes the deer don't do what we think they're going to do, or do the same thing they did the year before. So that's a constant challenge here. And I'm going to leave you today with this Asclepias incarnata, our swamp milkweed. So we started out in the wetland garden, and actually here now we're in one of the meadows that rings the perimeter of the Ambler Arboretum and the Ambler campus. And here we have swamp milkweed, and it has one of my favorite scents in a flower, and I just love it. It's kind of sweet and almost smells like I don't know, some sort of confection. It's really wonderful. And a meadow, you can see this, also attracts pollinators. Wasps are pollinators too, and beneficial insects. You can see on here, we're lucky enough to see that there is a monarch caterpillar. Of course, those milkweeds are the host plants for monarch butterflies, and here's a monarch caterpillar snacking away on the flower itself, which is pretty cool. There's another monarch caterpillar in there, so 2 monarch caterpillars, and another insect right there. And so that's a 3rd monarch caterpillar. Wow, lots of monarch caterpillars on this one. And so they are the host plant for monarch butterflies. They not only smell good, but are an important plant in our ecosystem and an important plant to support our winged wildlife and monarch butterflies in particular. So I encourage you once again to get out and stop and smell the flowers along the way of your path, wherever your journey takes you. And of course, remembering that for now, along the rest of the journey, we keep our masks on and we stay safe and keep everybody healthy. But in the meantime, we can make choices about our plants that support our wildlife and also help solve ecological problems by slowing stormwater, cleaning the water, and keeping floods from happening. So let's just take a look once again at our friends eating the flowers. And we do hope to see you soon in the Ambler Arboretum so we can do these walks and talks together in person and see what other amazing things we can find right here at the Arboretum together. So until then, take good care, and we'll see you on our website and on our Instagram page and through these virtual videos.